Dear learners, welcome you again in this Swayam MOOC course on environmental politics, theories, concepts and debate, week 8 lecture 2 entitled Institutional Mechanisms, in which we are going to cover the role of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, then Central Pollution Control Board, and the State Pollution Control Board. Then after we will be discussing the environmental concern and changing dimension with a special reference to center-state relationships. Along with that, we will be discussing the role of local bodies in environmental protection, and lastly we will be discussing the people's participation in environmental governance. So let's begin, learners. So here we can see the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the central body in India which is responsible for environmental protection, forest conservation and climate change mitigation. And here if we will talk about its functions or its role, so it basically includes the policy formulation and implementation. And here we can see that it serves as India's apex body for environmental governance. Along with that, it formulates and implements key policies like the EPA, that is Environment Protection Act of 1986, then Forest Conservation Act 1980, along with the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, that is to safeguard the ecosystem. Here, the ministry drives national climate action plans, including India's commitments under global agreements like the Paris Agreement of 2015 and also the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is as CBD. Here we can see that it coordinates with the state governments for ground level execution of pollution control, afforestation and wildlife conservation programs while representing India in international environmental forums. And here we can see that through these regulatory frameworks and strategic partnerships, this ministry balances ecological sustainability with development priorities. Now here we can see as the role, one of the major roles of this ministry is the pollution control. And here by directing the Central Pollution Control Board to monitor air quality like the graded response action plan for Delhi's smog and enforce waste rules, for example, ban on single-use plastics. Along with that, it mandates EIA, that is Environmental Impact Assessment, for projects like the highways or factories. And here, for example, we can take the stalled Vedanta refinery for its violations. Secondly, we can see that the forest wildlife conservation, and here we can see that it launches the several initiatives like the Green India Mission, basically focusing on afforesting 5M hectares, and also manages protected areas like some of the protected areas in which we can take the example of like Sundarbans Tiger Reserve. And here flagship programs like the Project Tiger, in which we can see the making of 50 plus reserves, have boosted tiger numbers to 3,167 by the year 2022. So here now we can see the climate change mitigation and adaptation. And here we can see that it leads India's commitments under the Paris Agreement, as I just mentioned previously. And here we can see that in the context of this, here we can see the example as the nationally determined contributions, that is as NDC. Along with that, this also promotes the renewable energy, carbon sinks and sustainable development initiatives, which are very, very important for the sake of environmental protection. And here we can see that this also implements the National Action Plan on Climate Change, that is as NAPCC, and missions and the several missions like the Solar Mission, National Water Mission, etc. Then here we can see that it works in the field of biodiversity and sustainable development. So here we can see the very important one, that is that it implements the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. That is a kind of like coordinating act with the international CBD, that is the Convention on Biological Diversity. Here it also promotes the ecosystem restoration, that is in form of promoting the mangroves. And lastly, we can see that it also encourages the corporate environmental responsibility, that is as CER. It means the like corporate sector is also liable for protecting the environment, and it is not just a kind of thing, but it is their major responsibility. And also the green business practices, which is basically focusing on the uses of eco-friendly initiatives and green technology too. Then here we can see its major role in international cooperation. So here we can see that it represents India at the several global levels, like the when there was like conference of parties as the UN climate summits. Then here we can say it represents India on the CBD platform as the Convention on Biological Diversity and International Solar Alliance platforms. Then here we can see that it also secures the funding, which is very very important, in form of providing financial assistance for the climate projects. And here, for instance, here we can see the Green Climate Fund, that is GCF, and the Global Environment Facility. So it also secures the cooperation with such funds too. Then here we can see the public awareness and research, in the field of public awareness and research. So here it conducts several environmental education programs in form of like eco clubs, Paryavaran Sathi, etc. And here, if we will talk about the funds, so here research through institutions like the ICFR, that is the Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education, and the Wildlife Institute of India. So it also funds with it. Then here we will be coming to the next portion, that is the central and state pollution control boards. So here we can see that the CPCB and SPCBs serve as India's primary pollution watchdogs, functioning under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And here, if we will particularly talk about the Central Pollution Control Board, so it sets national standards and coordinates with the state level through Central Pollution Control Boards. And here, which enforce regulations as the state level. And here, if we will see some of the examples, so they implement key laws like the Water Act of 1974. That is, for example, here we can take the example of monitoring Ganga pollution. Then the Air Act of 1981, which is basically focusing on the regulation of industrial emissions, and Environment Act of 1986, which was basically in the field of enforcing EIA norms. And here we can see that together they monitor air, water quality issue, then industry consents, and also penalizing the violators, like shutting polluting units in the Delhi NCR, and it is just to ensure compliance with the environmental safeguards. So here quickly we will see key separately, we will see that what are the roles and functions of CPCB, then after SPCB. So here if we will see the roles and functions of it, so here we can see that it maintains policy and standards, which is very important, and in this regard it sets the national ambient air and water quality standards. For example, the National Air Quality Index, which is released by it, and the effluent standards of it. Along with that, it also prepares the guidelines for the pollution control technologies, like what kind of technologies which we can use, I mean in the field of industries and other organizations, that may further control the issue of pollution or minimize it. And then here we can see the next one, that is about it maintains monitoring and enforcement too. So regarding that, here we can see that it tracks pollution levels via National Air Monitoring Program, that is as NAMP, and National Water Monitoring Program, that is NWMP. Along with that, it also talks about the issues of consent to operate and consent to establish for industries under the Water and Air Acts, which is a very, very remarkable role of it. Then here we can see that it also conduct research and development just for the sake of pollution impact and control measures, what kind of measures we can adopt to control the issue of pollution. Along with that, it also collaborates with the major institutions like the Indian Institute of Technology and then the NEERIs. Along with that, we can see that its role is also very important in the field of compliance and legal action. And here we can see that it directs closer or penalties for non-compliant industries. Along with that, it also manages the hazardous waste rules like, for example, VMW rules, or even the e-waste, which is a very, very important issue presently, that is called the electronic waste. So it also talks about that under the e-waste rules. And here we can also see that it runs public awareness campaigns too. And here we can see some of the important campaigns. Out of that, we can see the Sameer app for real-time air quality updates, which is a very commendable initiative taken by it. Now here we will be coming to the key initiatives. So here we can see firstly the National Clean Air Program, which basically aims to cut PM 2.5 by PM 10 levels by 40% by the year 2026 in how many cities? In 131 cities through the city specific action plans. And in this regard, they may initiate promoting electrical vehicles and waste management campaigns. Then here we can see secondly the graded response action plan, and here it implements staged emergency measures like we can see in Delhi NCR, that is the odd even vehicle rules, or even some kind of bans were imposed on the further construction, that is just to control the severe issue of air pollution. And here lastly we can see the online continuous emission monitoring system, that is a very important advancement which occurred due to the advancement in the field of ICT. And here it mandates real time emission tracking for industries, especially via connected sensors, and here with data publicly accessible to ensure transparency and compliance. And if they are violating it, so it will also show the non compliance of the industries too. So here we can see that these techniques demonstrate India's technology driven targeted approach to combat air pollution. Now here we will be coming to the second portion of this that is about the state pollution control boards. And here quickly we will see what are the role and functions of it. So here we can see that it is liable for implementing the laws in which it enforces the central level guidelines at the state level. Central level guidelines means the guidelines which are issued or given by the Central Pollution Control Board. Along with that, it also grants environmental clearances for small and medium industries. It is also very much famous, or famously working in the field of local monitoring. And here it conducts inspections and also collects the samples from the industries, the rivers, the polluted portions of it, and the landfills too. Along with that, we can see that it also submits report to its higher agency, that is Central Pollution Control Board, on the compliance status. What is the status of compliance presently? To it also submits the report to the CPCB. Along with that, we can see that it is also active in the field of waste management, and here basically it takes care of the municipal solid waste. And here that is basically it is along with basically about the biomedical waste that is basically coming from the hospitals and etc. And then the plastic waste rules too, that is specifically about the single use plastic. Along with that, it approves common effluent treatment plans for the industrial clusters. Then it also works for the public grievances. And here we can see that it addresses the complaints via online portals, as we have just mentioned in the context of Central Pollution Control Board 2. And here in the State Pollution Control Board, here we can see the KSPCB online, which is very much active in Karnataka. Now here we will be coming to the what are the environmental concern and the changing dimension of it. And it is basically with a special reference to center and state relationships. So as we all know that the Indian Constitution is basically adopted a federal structure with the although there the the preference is given to the centralized tendencies, but here even we have seen that there is a division of power too, in which it divides environmental governance between the central government and state governance. Under the central government, we can see the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change will come, and the Central Pollution Control Board, whereas in the state governments, the State Pollution Control Boards, then the state environment programs. And here we can see some of the issues like the overlapping jurisdictions, which may occur, conflicting priorities of the center and state, along with the weak enforcement, which further led to the situation of challenges. So it's present a kind of challenge in the effective environmental protection. So now here we can see that the constitutional framework for center state environmental roles. So in this regard, we can see that in the union list, which is basically comes under the central government control, and here air and water pollution, which is governed by the central laws like the Air Act of 1981, which I have mentioned in the beginning, Water Act of 1974, and Environment Protection Act of 1986, and it sets different standards regarding pollution at the national level. Secondly, we can see the forest and wildlife, in which we can see that regulated through the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 and Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which requires central approval for the forest land diversion, which is very, very important. Then after, we can see the interstate rivers in the context of it, and here central bodies like the National Mission for Clean Ganga, Namami Gange project, etc., or before that several projects was also there, just to take care of pollution and management of rivers like the Ganges and Yamuna. So here we can see altogether that this framework ensures uniform environmental governance while addressing the regional challenges in this context. Now we will be coming to the state list, which of course comes under the control of state government, and here the public health and sanitation, where states manages waste disposal, sewage treatment, and also the local pollution control measures. Along with that, in the field of land and water, there is lots of regulation of groundwater extraction, land use planning, and irrigation projects falls under the state's jurisdiction. Now we will be coming up to the third one, that is called the concurrent list, in which we can see that the center and state both have the authority to make the laws. But the fact is, the important fact is what? If there is clash between both regarding any laws in which both the governments, that is central government and state government, have made the laws, so whose laws will be accepted? So that is the laws which are made by the central government. So here we can see in the concurrent list, the environment and forest portion will come here. Both center, the central government law is like the EPA, that is Environment Protection Act of 1986, and also the state, which has made the state forest laws, can enact laws. Then we can see the electricity and industries. Here states implement policies, but must align with the central pollution norms for the thermal plants and factories. Now we will be coming to the most important portion of it, that is the collaboration and conflict which are associated with the center and state. So firstly, we will be talking about the collaboration mechanism, and here we can see that the national policies which are implemented by the states without any like a clash or a kind of difference. So here we can see the national clean air program, and here states prepare city action plans, as I have discussed in the very beginning, that is about the Delhi government's plan of odd even scheme. Then we can see the Namami Gange program. Here jointly center and state are funding for the river cleanup. Then the Green India Mission, and here afforestation drives with the state forest departments. So here we can see that how the state is collaborating, coordinating with the center government policies and laws. Now here we will be coming up with the central funding and schemes, and here we can see that the compensatory afforestation fund management and planning authority, and here funds from industries diverting forest like the highway projects are used for afforestation. For example, we can see that in Odisha planted 28 million trees in the year 22-23. Then we can see the National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change, and here it finances climate adaptation. Like for example, we can see in Himachal's apple orchid forest protection. Then we will be coming up to the regulatory coordination, and here we can see the Central Pollution Control Board and its representative at a state level as State Pollution Control Board's meeting. Here we can see harmonized air water standards, for example uniform STP norms for the Ganga basin states. Then we can also see the EIA, that is environmental impact assessments, and here states approve the different projects like related to local mining, and center handles the larger ones. Regarding that, here we can take the example of Vedanta refinery. Then here we will be coming up to the most important portion of it, that is the what are the conflicts and challenges which are associated with the center state relationships, in which the very first one is about the jurisdictional overlaps. And here, for example, we can see the industrial projects, it often requires both center and state clearances and ultimately leads to delays. And in this regard, we can take up the case of Vedanta's Odisha refinery case, which faced conflict with the central government agency, that is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and also it has to deal with the Odisha PCB. Along with that, the another important component of it is the differing priorities. And here we can see like the center, if the center is focuses on climate commitments like the net zero emission by the 2070, whereas states are prioritizing for their economic development growth on jobs and industrial growth. So sometimes states are diluting green norms like states prioritizing jobs and industrial growth for the sake of their economic development and growth, and sometimes it is diluting green norms. For example, here we can see that Punjab's stubble burning issue, that is a very important issue in this regard. Now here we will be coming to the weak enforcement by the states. And here, for example, we can see that the Central Pollution Control Board directives, in here many state governments fail to shut illegal industries like dye units, those who are polluting the Kanpur's Ganga river. So that is a very major problem in this regard. Along with that, we can see the political pressure, and here states hesitate to act against the polluting industries just due to the reason of employment and revenue concern. As we all know, if there is like people have to face the problem of their job or something like that, and ultimately it is going to give impact on the revenue system too. So because of these things which creates a kind of political pressure on the states, so that's why states also hesitate to act against such polluting industries. Now we will be coming to the data transparency issues, and here we can see that some state pollution control boards, that is SPCBs, even manipulate pollution data just to evade their accountability. And in this regard, we can take the example in the year 2020 CAG audit, Controller and Auditor General's audit, which revealed that Maharashtra SPCV underreported the industrial emissions in Mumbai, delaying corrective actions. And here we can see that such gaps has weakened the enforcement and public trust in environmental governance. Now we will be coming up to what are the recent shifts in center state dynamics. And here we can see that the 2022's environment assessment draft notification, and here it proposed fast tracking projects clearances and diluting the public hearings, which reduces the state's say. For example, we can see the exempted highway expansion from the scrutiny. That is a very major issue. Then secondly, we can see the Bharat Stage 4 norms, and here it nationally enforced emission standards overriding the state rules. For example, Delhi's push for stricter norms was suspended. Then after, we can see the NGT interventions, National Green Tribunals, and here Central Tribunal overruled the state policies. For example, banned 10-year-old diesel vehicles in Delhi despite the state objections. So here these steps show growing central control over the environmental decisions, and it is showing the which is a kind of recent shift in the center state dynamics towards the centralized tendencies. Now here we will be seeing the pushback from the states, and here we can pick up the Kerala's protest against the center's eco-sensitive zone ESZ orders, and argued it restricts states development rights. It means it's shown it's like discontent towards the center government's initiative. Secondly, we can take the example of Punjab and Haryana subtle burning issue, and here states are blaming the central government for the lack of financial support for the alternatives of such burning issues. Then after, we can take the example of Tamil Nadu's opposition to NEERI's Sterlite plant report, and here it accused central government that it is suffering from biasness in favor of some of the industries. Now we will be coming up to what is the way forward, and it is basically about strengthening the center state cooperation. So here firstly we can see the clearer division of power, which is very very important, and here it may be possible through amend laws to reduce the overlaps between the center and state laws. Then secondly, it is about the financial incentives for the states. It means that reward will be provided to the states those who are meeting the pollution targets, like clean air performance grants. Then thirdly, that is about the independent monitoring bodies, and here it reduced the political interference in the working of the state pollution control boards. Then we can see the public participation and transparency, which is very very important, and here it mandate real-time pollution data which will be shared by the states. And lastly, interstate councils for environmental issues, and here basically about the river basins, airshed management, and here basically we can take up the example of Indo-Gangetic plain area. Now we will be coming to the second last portion, that is about the role of local governments in environmental management. And here we can see that local government is basically about the municipal corporation, panchayats, and ULB, that is urban local bodies, which plays a very significant role at the grassroots level. And here if we will talk about its responsibilities, so it's span waste management, pollution control, water conservation, and urban green governance, and that's why making them the key actors in achieving this sustainable development. So now here quickly we will see its areas of functioning, like waste management and sanitation. So here solid waste management, in which local bodies enforce municipal solid waste management rules of 2016, that is just to ensure segregation, recycling, and scientific disposal of waste. And here we can see that it is promoted by some of the major cities like Indore and Surat too. Then here we can see the air and water pollution control. So here it monitors local industries, and here urban local bodies work with the SPCBs to inspect small scale industries, those who are violating the emission norms. Along with that, we can see urban air quality measures. It is also active there, in which we can take the example of cities like Delhi and Mumbai implement the odd even schemes, green bus fleets and smoke towers under the local directives. Thirdly, the urban planning and green spaces, in which we can see the master plans with eco zones, in which cities integrate green belts, urban forest and pedestrian friendly zones to combat heat islands. Then fourthly, that is about the climate resilience and disaster management, and here we can see the flood and heat action plans, in which the cities like Ahmedabad have heat action plans, while coastal towns implement the cyclone preparedness programs. And lastly, that is about the public participation and awareness, and here citizen grievance system, in which some of the apps like Swachhata Mitra, that is for the waste complaints, and Sameer, that is for the air pollution, which enables the public reporting. Along with that, we can see the formation of eco clubs in schools and colleges, and here municipalities promotes environmental education through local initiative. So now we have come up to the last portion of today's lecture, that is the public participation in governance. So here we can see that public participation plays a very important role in environmental governance, and it is basically a link between the policy formulation and effective implementation. Along with that, it ensures accountability and inclusivity. Here we can see that like various legal frameworks which is facilitating the citizen engagement in environmental governance, like the EPA Act of 1986, which enables public interest litigation for environmental violations, along with the Environment Impact Assessment 2006, and it basically mandates public hearings for major development projects. So here these mechanism basically provides a platform for community engagement, and that is to raise their voice concerns about the projects which are affecting the local ecosystem. So here we can see some of the examples of the grassroots public movements, like the Chipko movement, in which we have discussed in the previous lectures of 1970s, and very important of the Narmada Bachao Andolan of 1985, in which Medha Patekar and Baba Amte played an important role and got success in pressurizing the World Bank to withdraw its fund and delayed construction of it. Along with that, at local level, municipal ward committees and Panchayati Raj institutions are incorporating the citizen feedback on the issues of waste management, water conservation, along with the digital platforms like pollution reporting apps, which are empowering the individuals to monitor environmental quality. And here, some of the initiatives of the government like Swachh Bharat Mission have successfully mobilized the mass participation in the cleanliness drives. So these are the activity questions which are based on today's lecture. This is the reference which you may use as further reading. Thank you.